He thought it would be just another interview, just another round of jokes, but when David Letterman began teasing Arnold Schwarzenegger about his accent and background, no one could have predicted what happened next. Laughter echoed through the studio, sarcasm, cheap shots, but then Arnold spoke, and within minutes he didn't just silence the entire crowd, he changed how millions of people see strength, leadership, and him. You won't believe how one man flipped the entire show, not with anger, not with shouting, but with truth. Stay until the end, you don't want to miss this moment. The stage was bathed in bright lights, the audience buzzing with anticipation as the theme music of The Late Show with David Letterman faded out. It was 1997, and David Letterman was at the peak of his late-night powers, sharp, witty, and unpredictable. Tonight's guest, however, was a different kind of celebrity, a larger-than-life figure, both literally and figuratively. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Arnold Schwarzenegger. The applause roared as Arnold emerged from behind the curtain, dressed in a tailored navy suit that hugged his imposing frame. He greeted the audience with a signature wave, flashing that famous smile. As he sat down beside Letterman, the energy in the studio felt electric. Letterman leaned in, smirking playfully. "Arnold, you're looking more like a tank than a man. Do you fit through doorways like the rest of us?" Laughter erupted. Arnold chuckled politely, brushing off the jab. He had grown used to being underestimated, reduced to his accent, his muscles, his blockbuster persona. But tonight, the mocking would go a step further. David picked up a stack of cue cards and read aloud, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "So, I hear you're trying your hand at something new, politics, huh? Arnold, you've saved the world from aliens, robots, and fire-breathing dragons. Are you planning to flex your way through legislation too?" The audience howled. Arnold smiled warmly, but his eyes flashed with something deeper. He knew this wasn't just a joke, it was a challenge, one he had faced his entire life, and this time it was being broadcast to millions. Letterman, feeding off the crowd's laughter, went on, "Seriously though, what qualifies a guy who can't say, California, without a two-syllable detour to run for office? Is there a class in Terminator School for Political Science?" More laughter. But amidst the humor, something shifted. Arnold leaned back slightly, crossing one leg over the other, hands calmly folded. He wasn't flustered, he wasn't retaliating. He was waiting, letting the silence settle. Then came the moment. "I understand your doubts," Arnold said finally, his voice even, his Austrian accent unchanged but deliberate. "People have been laughing at me since I was a kid, with a funny name and a big dream in Austria. They told me I'd never make it as a bodybuilder. Then, in America, they laughed when I said I'd become a movie star. I was told my body was too strange, my accent too thick, and my name, Schwarzenegger, too impossible." The room quieted. But I believed in something bigger, not just in my own success, but in using that success to inspire others, to show them that your background doesn't limit your future. And now, yes, I'm exploring politics, not because I think it's easy, but because I believe I can help." Letterman blinked. The script had slipped from his hands. The audience listened, transfixed. Arnold leaned forward, eyes steady. "You see, David, you make light of what you don't understand. But people aren't tuning in tonight to hear another joke, some of them, they're watching to see if a man who's been doubted his whole life can rise again." And just like that, the mood changed, no more laughter, only respect. Even Letterman sat back, visibly caught off guard. The crowd, slowly at first, began to applaud, not out of obligation, but in genuine recognition. Arnold had just flipped the script, and it was only the beginning. As the applause slowly faded, David Letterman leaned in again, this time with a different energy, still playful, but noticeably more cautious. "Well, that was unexpectedly eloquent," he said, half smiling. "I've got to admit, Arnold, I didn't peg you as a speechmaker." Arnold returned the smile. "That's the thing about assumptions, David, they're often wrong." Laughter bubbled gently through the crowd, but it wasn't mockery, this time, it was appreciation. Letterman tried to steer the conversation back to his comfort zone. Okay then, Governor, since we're being serious, why politics? I mean, you've done it all. Why trade box office numbers for ballot boxes? Arnold paused, then, as if opening a door inside himself, he began to share a story no one expected. I remember the first time I stood in line for food, Arnold began. I was a child. It was post-war Austria, everything was rationed. We had barely anything. My mother would boil soup bones 5 times just to get more flavor. We were poor, not just in money, but in hope. You could hear a pin drop. There was an American soldier who gave me a piece of chocolate once, just 1 square. It was the first time I ever tasted anything sweet, and I thought, this is what America is. This country gives even to people like me. He looked out across the audience. That moment shaped my entire life. I started lifting weights because I believed strength could change my fate. I wanted to become something no one in my village thought possible. And when I came to America, I came with nothing but a dream, and muscles. The crowd laughed gently, but it was respectful. I worked hard. I became Mr. Olympia, not once, but 7 times. Then they said, "You'll never be an actor, your accent is too thick, your body too strange." But I became a leading man. Arnold paused, letting the silence breathe. Now they say I shouldn't be in politics, that I'm just an action hero. But if I listened to what people said I shouldn't be, I'd still be back in that cold Austrian village, waiting for chocolate to fall from heaven. The studio was quiet again, not from discomfort, but from respect. Letterman looked down at his note cards, you could see him recalibrating. Arnold sat tall, not defensive, just present. I want to give back to this country that gave me everything. If that means running for office, then that's what I'll do. Letterman tried to recover. Well, that's definitely more profound than your last movie. Arnold smiled this time, playfully. Depends on which one, some were meant to entertain, others to remind people that even machines can have a heart. The crowd chuckled, but the moment wasn't lost on anyone. He had come on the show as an actor, a bodybuilder, a caricature to be poked fun at, but now, he was something else entirely, a symbol of perseverance. And Letterman, the sharpest mind in late night, had just been outmaneuvered, not by wit, but by humility. There was a pause, a long one, and then, for the first time that night, Letterman leaned back and simply said, "Okay, Arnold, you win this one." The audience erupted with applause, but the real victory wasn't over David, it was over doubt. As the applause echoed through the studio, Letterman adjusted his tie, a rare gesture of visible discomfort. He was used to controlling the tempo of his show, guiding each interview like a conductor leads an orchestra. But tonight, the symphony had a new maestro. Arnold hadn't come with jokes or sound bites, he had come with truth. Still, Letterman wasn't one to concede entirely. With a slight smirk, he leaned forward again. "You know, Arnold," he began, tone casual but probing, "it's easy to say you want to help, but aren't you just another celebrity trying to stay relevant?" A murmur rippled through the audience. Arnold's expression didn't change. "Staying relevant," he repeated softly. "You know, David, when I was 17, all I wanted was to be relevant. I wanted people to know my name, to see me as something more than the poor son of a police chief in a broken country. I thought muscles would do that, then I thought movies would, and yes, they did. But relevance fades, David, purpose doesn't." That landed like a thunderclap. "I'm not running for office because I need attention," he said, voice steady. "I'm doing it because I remember what it's like to be powerless. I know what it means to be voiceless, and I've learned that true strength isn't about the size of your biceps, it's about how you lift others." The audience erupted in spontaneous applause, several stood clapping. Letterman glanced around, visibly caught off guard. Arnold leaned just slightly closer. "You talk for a living, David," he said gently, but I've spent my life acting out the stories no one believed I could live. So if people laugh when I say I want to lead, good, let them. I've heard laughter before, but I've also turned that laughter into applause. The room was now fully Arnold's. Even the camera crew had slowed their movements, sensing the gravity of what was happening. And then, as if fate were joining the performance, something unexpected happened. From the audience, a woman stood. Her voice trembled slightly as she spoke. "My father immigrated here the same year you did," she said, her hand pressed to her chest. "He used to tell us that watching you succeed made him believe he could too." "Thank you." Gasps swept through the crowd. Arnold turned toward her, stood slowly, and nodded respectfully. "Tell your father thank you," he said. He was part of the dream too. It was no longer just a late-night segment, it had become a moment, a reckoning, a revelation. Letterman sat back, almost dwarfed by the scale of what had just unfolded. He took a sip of water and chuckled, an admission of sorts. "This wasn't the interview I expected," he said. Arnold looked at him, smiling. "That's what happens when you let someone speak from the heart." And then Letterman asked the question no one saw coming, "Would you ever consider the presidency?" The audience gasped again. Arnold laughed softly. "You know, I wasn't born here, David, but maybe that's okay. Maybe I wasn't meant to sit in the Oval Office, maybe I was meant to show people that leadership can come from anywhere, from a village in Austria, from a boy who had nothing, from anyone willing to rise when they're told to stay down." A pause. Letterman looked down at his cue cards and slowly slid them aside. "You've changed the mood of this place, Arnold," he said, voice more sincere now. "And I've interviewed everyone from presidents to pranksters, but tonight, I think you reminded us of something rare, something we forget too often." Arnold tilted his head. "And what's that?" "That the American dream isn't about being admired," Letterman said. "It's about overcoming." The audience clapped again, not loudly this time, but deeply, thoughtfully. The camera panned across rows of faces, smiling, contemplative, some even tearful. Back at the desk, Arnold and Letterman shook hands. "I still don't think you can pronounce California quite right," Letterman quipped. Arnold burst into laughter, the kind that softened everything. "And I still think you wear too many socks with those shoes." The crowd laughed again, but this time it was different. It wasn't at Arnold, it was with him. He had walked in a punchline and walked out a headline. The show went on, the music returned, the house band played a light-hearted tune, and David Letterman shifted the tone back to his usual rhythm, jokes, ads, and the next guest waiting in the wings. But something had changed. Backstage, after the cameras stopped rolling, the atmosphere was noticeably quieter. Crew members whispered to one another, some avoided eye contact, others seemed contemplative, as if what they had witnessed hadn't quite settled in yet. Arnold, now out of the spotlight, was approached by a young production assistant. She looked nervous. "Mr. Schwarzenegger," she asked softly, "I just wanted to say, my dad's a mechanic, he's from Slovakia. You reminded me tonight that he has every right to dream, even if people laugh at him." Arnold smiled, placed a hand gently on her shoulder, and said, "Your father's strength isn't just in his hands, it's in you, keep his dream alive." She nodded, tears welling up, and stepped away. Letterman emerged from behind the curtain, holding 2 mugs of coffee. "Peace offering?" he asked, raising one. They stood quietly for a moment, sipping their coffee, the den of the studio slowly dying behind them. "You know," Letterman began, his voice quieter than usual, "I've made a career out of poking fun at people, it's part of the game. But you, tonight, you didn't just take it, you turned it into something else, something bigger." Arnold looked at him thoughtfully. "When people laugh at you, you have 2 choices, let it define you or let it lift you. I've always chosen the second." Letterman nodded slowly. "I wasn't expecting to be challenged tonight." "You weren't the only one who needed to hear it," Arnold said. "Sometimes I need to remind myself too." The clip from the show aired the next night and spread like wildfire. Within hours, it was all over the internet, not as a moment of comedy, but as a masterclass in grace, strength, and quiet defiance. Arnold Schwarzenegger delivers humbling truth on Letterman. From Terminator to truth teller, Schwarzenegger's unexpected interview wins hearts. Mocked on air, Arnold's response leaves the studio in tears. It wasn't just entertainment, it was a reminder that character matters, that beyond the cameras, beyond the muscles and punchlines, was a man who knew who he was and didn't need validation to prove it. Letters poured in, emails flooded Arnold's team from immigrants, from veterans, from single mothers, from young dreamers working night shifts while studying for exams. One note read, "Dear Arnold, I'm a dishwasher in New Jersey. I don't have much, but when you said that true strength is lifting others, I felt seen for the first time in years. Thank you for speaking for people like me." Another simply said, "My son has an accent and is afraid to speak in school. After watching your interview, he stood in front of his class today and read a poem aloud." The story wasn't just Arnold's anymore, it belonged to everyone who had ever been underestimated. Weeks later, Arnold was at a community fundraiser for youth education. The event was modest, folding chairs, lemonade stands, children playing tag in the background, no flashing cameras, no Hollywood shine, just families, people, real stories. A boy around 10 years old approached Arnold shyly, holding a paper folded in half. "I wrote you something," he said, looking down at his shoes. Arnold knelt to his level and opened the paper. It read, "You make me believe I can be strong, not because you have muscles, but because you didn't let them become your only strength." Arnold looked up, moved beyond words. He placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Never forget," he said. "Your strength is already inside you." The boy beamed, and in that moment Arnold understood something that not even fame, titles, or applause could offer. Legacy isn't what you build for yourself, it's what you leave in others. Later that night, a reporter asked Arnold a question as he left the event. "Mr. Schwarzenegger," she said, after that powerful Letterman moment, "what do you think your message to the world really is?" Arnold paused, then replied, "That appearances deceive, that the world may see you one way, but your heart defines who you truly are. I was underestimated, laughed at, doubted, but I never let that become my story." He smiled gently. And maybe the next time someone sees a kid with an accent, or a janitor in the hallway, or a man who doesn't fit the mold, they'll think twice before they laugh. He stepped into his car and drove off into the quiet city night, but the echo of his words would remain. Because on a late-night talk show once known for jokes, a former bodybuilder once mocked for being too foreign, too bulky, too unpresidential, had delivered a lesson far greater than punchlines. He reminded us that kindness is strength, that composure is power, and that the best comebacks don't humiliate others, they elevate everyone. Never judge a soul by their surface. Real strength is measured not in how loud you speak, but in how deeply you move others.